There is a revolution happening in the dark, not in laboratories, not in hospitals, but in bedrooms, in the silent, surrendered hours when consciousness fades and the body believes itself at rest. This revolution is not being led by doctors or scientists, though they are finally beginning to understand it. It is being led by your own biology, by the ancient, precise machinery of repair that has kept our species alive for millennia. But here is what almost no one tells you. This machinery, this nightly renovation of your very existence, can be sabotaged, not by disease, not by genetics, but by something so simple, so overlooked, that when you understand it, you will never look at sleep the same way again. Your body's position at night is not a comfort preference, it is a command, a physical instruction written into the 8 hours of repair that determines whether your brain ages gracefully or deteriorates silently. And the tragedy is this: most people are giving their bodies the wrong instruction, night after night, year after year, never knowing that the numbness in their hands, the fog in their thoughts, the dizziness that fades by breakfast, these are not signs of poor sleep, they are neurological whispers. Signals from a brain that spent the night negotiating reduced blood flow, compressed arteries, and the slow accumulation of damage that will not announce itself until it is too late. Dr. Shigeaki Hinohara lived to 105 years old, and he understood something that modern medicine is only now beginning to prove. Longevity is not built in dramatic moments, it is built in silent, repeated choices. The choice of how you move, how you eat, how you breathe, and yes, how you position your body during the 1/3 of your life spent horizontal and vulnerable. Because while you sleep, your brain does not stop needing oxygen. It does not pause its demand for blood flow. It does not forgive mechanical mistakes. Picture this: 25,000 miles of vessels threading through your body, arteries, veins, capillaries, a living highway system more sophisticated than anything humanity has ever built. At the center of this network, demanding 1/4 of all the fuel this river carries despite being only 2% of your body's weight, is your brain. A 3-pound universe of memory, emotion, consciousness, utterly dependent on a constant, flawless flow. This flow is not a suggestion, it is a decree of existence. Interrupt it for minutes, and domains of the self are erased forever. Slow it even slightly for hours each night, and you initiate a silent fade, a slow, invisible deterioration that shows up decades later as the very thing people call normal aging. But aging, as Hinohara taught, is not time passing. Aging is cells losing their ability to adapt, and adaptation depends on flow. Blood flow delivers oxygen. Oxygen fuels mitochondria, those tiny power plants in every cell. Mitochondria create energy. Energy powers repair. Repair slows aging. Break this chain at any point, and degeneration quietly accelerates. During waking hours, your posture changes constantly. Muscles adjust, blood vessels respond. But during sleep, the body remains still, sometimes for hours, locked into a single configuration. If that configuration restricts circulation, the brain endures prolonged, low-grade stress. Not enough to kill cells immediately, just enough to weaken them slowly, night after night, in a process so gradual that you attribute the symptoms to everything except the truth. Modern neuroscience has revealed something both beautiful and terrifying. While you dream, your body is in a state of hyper-focused maintenance. Cerebrospinal fluid washes through the grooves of your brain like a nocturnal tide, flushing out the metabolic debris of the day, the amyloid proteins, the tau tangles, the very waste products linked to Alzheimer's and cognitive decline. Your glymphatic system, this hidden cleaning network discovered only in recent years, is 10 times more active in sleep than in wakefulness. Your blood pressure dips, giving your vessel walls a respite from the constant hammering of the day's pulse. Growth hormone is secreted, repairing tissues. Memories are consolidated from the fragile chalk of short-term recollection into the enduring marble of long-term understanding. But all of this, every single one of these vital, life-extending processes depends on one paramount condition: optimal circulation. The cleansing tide requires pressure and flow to push it through. The hormonal signals need clear pathways to travel. The brain's repair shops need a steady, uninterrupted supply of oxygen and nutrients to do their work. And this is where the geometry of the night becomes fateful. Your body's position is the dictator of that flow. It is the silent architect determining whether your brain receives the nourishment it requires or whether it must spend 8 hours in a state of rationing, compensating, slowly accumulating the micro-injuries that will compound over decades. Let us move from the abstract to the anatomical. Follow one of the great rivers, the carotid arteries, as they rise from your heart, pulse alongside your windpipe, and enter the fortress of your skull. These are soft, living tubes, responsive to pressure, designed for unobstructed flow. Now imagine you sleep in what feels most natural to many: a tight curl, knees drawn up, chin drifting towards your chest, the fetal position. It feels safe, primal, like a return to the womb. But watch what happens inside. As your chin presses toward your chest, the soft tissues of your neck compress inward. Both carotid arteries, simultaneously, are flattened against the vertebrae and muscles. The flow, which should be smooth and laminar, becomes turbulent, chaotic. In that chaos, the delicate endothelial lining of your vessels, the Teflon-like surface that keeps blood moving cleanly, sustains microscopic injuries. And to an injury, the body sends a repair crew: platelets, cholesterol, inflammatory cells. A plaque begins to form, a tiny seed of future catastrophe. You feel nothing, there is no pain, but the damage is being written into your arteries in a language your body will read years later as stroke, as cognitive decline, as the sudden collapse that seems to come from nowhere. Research using sophisticated overnight monitoring has shown that people who sleep in this chin-to-chest position experience over 100 episodes of significant blood flow reduction per night. Each episode increases intracranial pressure. Each episode forces the brain to work harder to maintain circulation. Each episode is a rehearsal for failure. At the same time, this position compresses the jugular veins, the drainage pipes for deoxygenated blood leaving the skull. You have created a traffic jam at the very gates of consciousness. Blood struggles to get in, and waste-laden blood struggles to get out. The glymphatic system, which relies on this smooth exchange, is disrupted. The amyloid proteins that should be flushed away begin to linger. Inflammation quietly rises. White matter, the brain's communication cables, begins to fray. On an MRI scan, these injuries appear as hyperintensities, scattered like tiny stars across the gray landscape of the brain. They are not dramatic strokes, they are quieter. They are the footprints of chronic, low-grade oxygen shortage left on the terrain of the mind. And they are powerfully predictive of dementia, gait instability, and major vascular events. I remember a patient, a teacher in her late 50s, vibrant, health-conscious. She meditated, ate well, walked daily. Yet she came to me not with a collapse, but with a creeping fear. She was forgetting her students' names, losing threads of conversations. Her MRI showed those scattered stars, white matter lesions throughout her brain. The pattern was not of one event, but of many, a chronic, repetitive injury. When we traced her habits back, we found the answer in the geometry of her nights. For 40 years, 8 hours a night, she had been gently, persistently starving the very organ she relied on to teach, to connect, to be herself. This is the profound, unsettling insight that changes everything. Our greatest threats are not always the sudden cataclysms. They are the slow leaks, the repeated minor insults that our formidable bodies absorb, adapt to, and silently accumulate. Aging itself is often framed this way, as the accumulation of cellular and molecular damage over time. We think of sun exposure damaging skin, of oxidative stress wearing down mitochondria, but we must think bigger. We must think systematically. The architecture of your sleep is a macro habit that directly influences that rate of accumulation. A compromised artery, night after night, accelerates the wear and tear on the vascular system. A brain denied full perfusion, night after night, accumulates the debris it cannot clear and loses the resilience it needs to withstand the inevitable storms of life. Consider another common position, the twisted posture, where your torso faces one direction while your pelvis rotates another. People adopt this to relieve back tension, unaware that they are transferring mechanical stress directly to their vascular system. Running through the bones of your cervical spine are the vertebral arteries, slender, vital conduits supplying the brainstem, cerebellum, and visual cortex. These arteries are exquisitely sensitive to torsion. When you twist your spine and hold it for hours, the artery follows, stretched on one side, compressed on the other, wound around the axis like a garden hose. Blood does not like sharp turns. Flow becomes uneven, turbulence forms, and where flow is disturbed, clotting risk rises. Real-time imaging studies have shown that sustained spinal rotation can reduce vertebral artery flow by more than 60%. In younger individuals, the system recovers quickly, but in older bodies where vessel walls have stiffened and endothelial repair is slower, recovery is incomplete. The result is a nightly assault on the regions of the brain responsible for balance, coordination, vision. This is why some people wake with dizziness, blurred sight, a strange disorientation that fades by mid-morning. The brain is rebooting from a night of compromised circulation, and each reboot leaves behind a small amount of damage that compounds silently until it crosses a threshold and announces itself as disease. Dr. Hinohara believed that health is not fragile, but it is precise. Small deviations, repeated endlessly, shape destiny. Sleep is not passive, it is an active biological state governed by circadian rhythms, hormonal pulses, and vascular dynamics. The hormesis principle, the idea that mild, acute stress triggers protective adaptation, applies beautifully to exercise, to cold exposure, to fasting. You stress the system briefly and it overcompensates, becoming stronger. But chronic, uncompensated stress? That is not hormesis. That is wear and tear. That is the slow grind that leads to breakdown. The compromised blood flow from a twisted neck or a compressed artery provides no adaptive signal. It is just a deficit, a silent tax levied on your brain's energy budget every single night, draining the reserves your brain needs for plasticity, for repair, for resilience against the true insults of disease and time. Now contrast that with a night of optimized flow. In that state, the brain's glymphatic system can operate at peak efficiency. Beta amyloid, the sticky protein that forms the plaques of Alzheimer's disease, is flushed out with the other metabolic waste. NAD+ levels, critical for mitochondrial function and DNA repair, can recover fully. Inflammatory cytokines are cleared. The blood-brain barrier, which protects the delicate neural tissue from toxins, maintains its integrity. Growth hormone pulses through, signaling muscle and connective tissue to rebuild. The hippocampus, the seat of memory formation, consolidates the day's learning into retrievable knowledge. All of this happens automatically, effortlessly, if you provide the conditions. And the first condition is unobstructed blood flow. So, what are those conditions? If the dangerous positions are those that compress, twist, and kink, then the optimal position is one of alignment and gravitational assist. It is the position that respects your natural curves of your spine, the cervical lordosis, the thoracic kyphosis, the lumbar lordosis, keeping the highways open and the traffic flowing smoothly. For most, this is achieved lying on the back with a slight elevation of the head and torso and support under the knees. This is not arbitrary preference. The elevation uses gravity to aid venous return from the brain without overworking the heart. It keeps the airway open, mitigating sleep apnea, another silent saboteur of nocturnal oxygen. The knee support maintains the lumbar curve, preventing the spine from flattening, twisting, or creating pressure points that would force you to shift positions repeatedly. For the dedicated side sleeper, the goal is symmetry and spinal neutrality. The spine must form a straight line from the crown of the head to the tailbone when viewed from behind. This requires a pillow thick enough to fill the entire space between your ear and the mattress, keeping the neck aligned with the thoracic spine, not bent upward, not crumpled downward. A firm pillow between the knees is non-negotiable. It prevents the top leg from pulling the pelvis into rotation, which torques the lumbar spine and, as we have seen, jeopardizes the vertebral arteries. This is not about comfort in the traditional sense. This is about creating the mechanical conditions for optimal flow. My patient's transformation illustrates this perfectly. We introduced a contoured cervical support pillow that cradled her neck without pushing her head forward. We taught her the quarter turn technique, sleeping slightly rotated forward from true side lying to reduce pressure on the bottom shoulder and open the chest for easier breathing. Most importantly, we used timed reminders for the first month to help her consciously adjust whenever she reverted to the old damaging position. Her body had memorized that comma shape over 4 decades. Retraining it required deliberate, patient repetition, but within 6 months, her cognitive tests showed marked improvement. A follow-up MRI revealed no new lesions. The existing ones had not expanded. Her brain, given the chance, had begun to heal. This is not magical thinking. This is the body's intrinsic capacity for repair when you stop sabotaging it. Every cell in your body wants to survive, wants to thrive. Evolution has equipped you with repair mechanisms of staggering sophistication, but those mechanisms require resources, oxygen, nutrients, energy, and time. Sleep is when you provide all 4 in abundance, or it should be. If your sleep architecture is flawed, if your nightly geometry restricts the very circulation those repair processes depend on, then you are asking your biology to perform miracles with one hand tied behind its back. There comes a moment in every life when the question changes. It stops being, "How long will I live?" and becomes, "How well will I live inside the years I am given?" Dr. Shigeaki Hinohara understood this shift better than most. He did not chase longevity as a number on a calendar. He cultivated it as a state of biological harmony, where systems support one another instead of competing, where the body is placed in conditions that allow repair to outpace decay, where discipline is not punishment but kindness toward future cells. And sleep, in this philosophy, is not rest, it is governance. It is the nightly vote you cast for the kind of brain, the kind of body, the kind of life you will wake up to years from now. When the body lies in proper alignment, head neutral, neck supported, spine allowed its natural curves, something profound happens beneath the skin that you cannot see but can absolutely measure. Arteries remain patent and wide. Veins drain freely without resistance. Cerebral perfusion pressure stabilizes in the optimal range. Oxygen delivery becomes smooth, continuous, rhythmic, not frantic and interrupted. This environment allows mitochondria to return to their most efficient mode of ATP production. They stop churning out reactive oxygen species as distress signals and return to clean energy generation. NAD+ levels, which decline with age and are critical for sirtuin activation and DNA repair, can recover during these undisturbed hours. Oxidative stress, the slow fire of aging at the cellular level, quiets. Inflammatory cytokines retreat. Neurons shift out of survival mode and back into growth, plasticity, learning. Slight elevation of the upper body, a wedge of just 15 to 30 degrees, enlists gravity as an ally rather than an obstacle. Venous blood leaves the brain effortlessly, carrying away carbon dioxide and metabolic waste. The glymphatic system, which functions like the brain's nighttime janitorial service, operates at maximum efficiency. The cerebrospinal fluid pulses through the interstitial spaces, sweeping out the amyloid beta fragments, the oxidized lipids, the damaged proteins that, if allowed to accumulate, become the seeds of neurodegeneration. This is not speculative, this is observable physiology, and it happens best when flow is unimpeded. The effect is cumulative in a way that our minds, trained to think in days and weeks, struggle to grasp. One night of optimized sleep posture improves morning clarity. You wake with sharper thoughts, quicker recall. A week sharpens memory consolidation. A month begins to preserve cognitive reserve, that buffer of neural resilience that determines how well you withstand future insults. A year delays measurable decline. A decade can be the difference between vibrant independence and slow deterioration. Because the brain, unlike many organs, does not fail suddenly in most people. It fades. It loses processing speed. It misplaces memories. It struggles with balance and coordination. And all of these losses are accelerated by chronic, low-grade vascular insufficiency, the kind created by 8 hours a night of poor positioning. This is where the science of longevity and the practice of intentional living converge. Hinohara often spoke of discipline not as restriction, but as liberation from future suffering. He understood that every small, repeated action either builds resilience or erodes it. Aligning your body at night is an act of profound foresight, a quiet promise to your future self that you will not burden them with preventable damage. It is saying, I understand that my brain is not invincible. I understand that circulation is not guaranteed. I understand that the choices I make in the dark, when no one is watching, when I am unconscious and vulnerable, will echo through decades, and I choose to protect what I cannot afford to lose. Many people believe aging is written into the calendar, that decline is inevitable, that the fog and forgetfulness and fragility are simply what happens when you grow old. But modern biology, the kind being pioneered by researchers studying cellular senescence and epigenetic reprogramming and mitochondrial health, tells a radically different story. Aging is plastic, malleable. The rate at which it progresses responds dramatically to environment, behavior, and repeated micro-decisions. And 8 hours a night, over a decade, that is nearly 30,000 hours, is not a small decision. It is one of the largest determinants of whether your brain receives clean, uninterrupted circulation or endures subtle, repeated deprivation. The difference between these two paths does not announce itself loudly. It whispers. It shows up as the mental fog you blame on stress, as the balance issues you attribute to age, as the memory lapses you laugh off, until one day the whispers become a roar, until one day the accumulated damage crosses a threshold and manifests as stroke, as vascular dementia, as the sudden inability to recognize your own children. And by then, reversal is no longer possible. But prevention?
Prevention is always possible, and it begins tonight. It begins with the conscious, deliberate act of configuring your body in a way that respects the physics of flow and the biology of repair. This is not about fear. Fear paralyzes. This is about stewardship. You are the caretaker of a nervous system that carries your memories, your identity, your capacity to love and think and create. Protecting it does not require extreme measures or expensive interventions. It requires consistency. It requires the willingness to make your sleep environment not just comfortable, but therapeutic. It requires understanding that the pillow beneath your head, the position of your spine, the angle of your neck, these are not trivial preferences. They are settings, dials, parameters that determine the quality of repair happening in the unseen depths of your biology. Hinohara lived beyond a century not because he had access to secret medicines or genetic advantages. He lived because he honored small daily disciplines. He understood that health is preserved in the margins, in the quality of your movement, the rhythm of your breath, the geometry of your rest. He understood that longevity is not found in miracle cures or last-minute interventions. It is built patiently and deliberately in the dark, one aligned night at a time, one unobstructed artery at a time, one fully oxygenated neuron at a time. Tonight, when you turn off the light and lay your head down, you are not simply ending a day. You are shaping a future version of your brain. You are either facilitating the ancient, elegant machinery of repair, or you are quietly placing obstacles in its path. The choice is yours. It always has been. Give your brain space to breathe. Give your vessels room to flow. Give your cells the oxygen they need not just to survive, but to thrive. And then trust sleep to do what it has always done best, to restore what time and stress try to take away. Because in the silent hours, when the world fades and consciousness dissolves, your body is performing miracles. The only question is whether you are helping or hindering. And the answer to that question will write itself into every thought you think, every memory you keep, every year you live for the rest of your life.